Hello and welcome back. Today we're talking about love poetry, compliments and cliches. And we're going to start with a famous Scottish poem by Robert Burns. A red, red rose. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, though all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well awhile, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile. The poem is very simple. I think the most resonant part of it is that it's done in a Scottish accent, which makes it kind of magical. He starts by calling his love a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. There's a freshness and a beauty about her. And then he calls her a melody that's sweetly played in tune. So he's using fairly simple imagery to evoke her beauty. And then he goes on to talk about the length of time he'll love her, which is a really, really long time, until all the seas dry up, until all the rocks melt away from the sun, until all the sands of life are over. But it closes with him parting from her, at least for a while. Now, why is he going away? The poem doesn't say. But maybe that sense that absence just makes things even more sentimental. When do you express your love for someone the most? It's when you're going away. There's really not much to this poem. It's very simple, it's very sweet, and it's very heavy on the compliments. But do those compliments really strike us very profoundly? I mean, talking about your love like a sweet rose or a sweet song, that's not really that innovative. How long will you love me? Till all the seas go dry, till all the rocks melt away. Okay. The best line in the poem, to me, is the last one. And I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile. And the only reason I love this line is because it reminds me of the Proclaimers.
I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more to be the man who walks 1,000 miles to fall down at your door.
So if you want a poem to compliment someone, A Red, Red Rose is a complimentary poem, but it's not as nuanced or as subtle as something like, say, Lord Byron's She Walks in Beauty. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and light meet in her aspect and her eyes. There's some subtlety of image for you. There are plenty of love songs out there, and a lot of them really lay on the metaphors thick. I can think of many metaphors used in love songs to describe the person that you're attracted to. But a lot of times the problem with those metaphors is they're too predictable. If we use the same metaphor over and over and over again, eventually it begins to feel stale. Or it doesn't sink in. It's when an image shocks us. That's what makes good poetry. In an introduction to The Open Door, the 100th anniversary poetry anthology of Poetry Magazine, Christian Wyman talks about how poetry reawakens one's capacity for surprise. That concept has stuck with me for many years. The truth is, good poetry surprises us. If we hear the same metaphors we've always heard, it doesn't really sink in, it just kind of bounces off. But when I see an image that I'm very used to, that I see every day, but I see it in a new and surprising way, that really begins to stick and sink in. Shakespeare, one of the greatest poets of all time, knew this well. Let's look at a couple of his poems that play with the concept of an easy metaphor to describe a loved one. First, I want to talk about Sonnet 18, the very famous, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" The first line of the poem establishes that metaphor. Here's someone that you're attracted to, someone who's beautiful, someone who has wonderful qualities, and so you want to describe that person using a metaphor. Why not a summer's day? After all, who doesn't like summer? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Instead of saying, you are like a summer's day, he asks the question, should I compare you to a summer's day? And the answer ultimately is, no. You're way better than a summer's day. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. After all, rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. In other words, there's plenty of things about a summer day that just aren't that great. And so to compare you to a summer's day would be a disservice, like comparing you to a rose because you're so prickly. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance, or nature's changing course untrimmed. So sometimes summer's days are too hot, sometimes it gets cloudy. But notice where he begins to go from here. And every fair from fair sometime declines. All beauty eventually loses its beauty, including summer's day. But wait a second, don't human beings lose their beauty as well? I mean, we're gonna all get old and ugly someday, if we don't die first and turn into worm food and dust. There's no hanging on to beauty. So how can he say that this person of his affection and this person of beauty can endure forever? But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou goest. In other words, you're never gonna die. You're never gonna get old, you're never gonna get ugly. How is that possible? The answer is in the last part of the poem, the punchline, so to speak. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. A funny twist at the end of this poem is the fact that the poem itself is what is going to endure, not really the person. But as long as this poem endures, and as long as men are able to read it, well, they'll still remember the beauty of this person. And that's immortality, in a way. But then again, is it more a compliment of the poem itself, or the person who the poem is about? That's a point to ponder. In any case, Shakespeare is taking a traditional metaphor, you are like a lovely summer's day, and wrapping it up and playing with it and turning it around. He does so even more in another of his sonnets. In Sonnet 130, he really plays with turning cliches on their heads. Notice how he takes all of the metaphors that probably everyone else around him were using to describe their loved ones and undoes them. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Notice how he takes each of these images. Oh, her eyes are like the sun, her lips are like coral. It's like she's got roses in her cheeks. And he points out that literally, they make no sense. I mean, would you really want to have a loved one who had eyes like the sun? That would be terrifying. Kind of like Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings. I will be beautiful! No, that would be awful. And let's face it, there is no human being that smells like perfume, unless they're covered in it. And the fun thing about this poem is that it sounds like it's going to be extremely insulting, but it's really not. He's not saying that she's ugly. He's not saying that she's gross. He's just saying these metaphors are stupid. Notice how he says, I love to hear her speak. Yeah, I love listening to her voice, but it's not music. And let's face it, she's human. She steps on the ground. But the last two lines, again, are the twist. You notice that Shakespeare's style of sonneteering ends with a couplet, and that couplet is usually the conclusion or the response to the argument of the whole piece. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. In other words, I think my love is as unique and as perfect and as wonderful as any other woman. In fact, more so than all those other women who are constantly flattered to and lied to. So you may lie to your girl up and down and talk about her beautiful rosy cheeks, her beautiful shining eyes, her beautiful sweet-smelling breath. But you know what? I'm going to be realistic about mine and just tell her how truly beautiful she is. On her own merits, not on these crazy metaphors. Can you think of any love songs that give pretty shallow, hollow metaphors for a loved one? I sure can. How about a song that turns these kind of metaphors on their head? Shakespeare realized that giving an easy symbol or an easy metaphor would not be a very enduring kind of image. He knew how to write a poem and make it stick around for a while. So next time you give someone you love a compliment, try to make it count. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or watch another video. If you like the idea of turning over easy metaphors on their heads, I highly recommend the Gregory Brothers song Unbelievable. It's what happens when you go on a date with a really unbelievable person. I'll see you next time.